Now, we asked you earlier who lives in a house like this. You may well have read one of his 71 books. He's famous the world over for his concept of lateral thinking. So famous, in fact, that he can earn £25,000 in a day. The answer is Edward de Bono. Gillian went to meet him, but first, here she is with a quick lesson in his main ideas.
An Aladdin's cave is one way of describing the great guru Edward de Bono's flat. But another description, and one I must say I far prefer as I'm very nearly as messy myself, is creative, inspiring, fascinating. This, after all, is the lair of the father of innovative thinking. So we can now assume that there's a close correlation between chaos and creativity. But what are his creative ideas? What is his legacy to the world? Those two words, lateral thinking. Well, as it sounds, lateral thinking is not conventional, far from it. De Bono's theory is that the mind is a self-organizing mechanism. Now, what that means is that the brain is set up for efficient thinking rather than being set up for any sort of creative thinking. For example, when you're crossing the road and you see something driving towards you, which has four wheels and it's made of metal, you think, a car. You don't, obviously, wonder whether it's an alien coming perhaps to abduct you, or how it could be more aerodynamic, or whether it should be differently configured. You simply recognize it for what it is. If you didn't, it wouldn't be efficient. In fact, you'd probably have been flattened before you'd finished your train of thought. In other words, then, when information comes into your brain, it always passes through the same channels. There you are. The idea with lateral thinking, though, is to provoke your mind, and provoke is a really key term. And the provocation then pushes your thoughts into channels that they wouldn't otherwise flow through. There you are. Now, this promotes, says de Bono, an entirely new way of thinking. Now, how do you get there? Well, one way of doing this is to use his deliberate tools of provocation, as they're called. When you're in a group, you do this by giving a sign that you're about to embark on a train of lateral thought. So you say, and I must admit I have huge difficulties with this, you say, po. Now, po equals potential and possibility, and is the opposite of no. Now, you follow this up with a deliberately absurd statement, which you may come up with by, say, reversing the true order of things. For example, you might say, you die before you die. And that particular provocation, as you'll see in the interview, led to an entirely new form of life insurance in the States. Now, stimulating creativity and the effectiveness of groups, you may recognize one or two faces there, is one of de Bono's great passions. One way is to use his framework, the 6 thinking hats. Now, one of the problems with groups is that people are in different modes. One person may be having a creative idea and someone else may be busy criticizing it. And the notion behind the 6 thinking hats is that everyone thinks in the same way, i.e. wears the same hat at the same time. The key thing is that all the members of the team deliberately wear one hat, and it has to be the same hat simultaneously. Now, here's an example of how a few of the hats might work. Say now you're in full creative flow. Well, you're then in the green hat mode. Green standing for vegetation and growth. This is where you throw in all your new ideas. Then there's another mode, the red hat. Red stands for fire and passion. So here everyone gives their emotions, and there's no need at all to justify them. Then there's the black hat. Now, black is the negative one. When the group's in black hat mode, all the criticisms are made. And there's the blue hat as well, which is usually used last. De Bono describes it as blue like the sky, being all-encompassing. And that means it's the organizing hat, pulling together all the conclusions. Now, de Bono says using these methods is far faster and far more constructive as a way of getting the most out of groups.